Hi, I'm Danny Palacio, and this is Awaking Moment podcast. This week, we have the pleasure and honor of a returning visitor, Sunnie Brown. And we're going to, of course, explore and go wherever spirit leads us. But our intention is to talk about cleansing and purification with the use of sacred herbs, flowers, essences, and then we'll just see where it goes. I want to thank Sunnie for joining me today, and I will give her the opportunity to introduce herself. And here we go. Sunnie, take it away.
All right. Thanks for having me, Danny. My name's Sunnie Brown, and I own Resonate Health Spa in Newburgh, Oregon. I'm also a esthetician of over 20 years. I love doing sugaring and microcurrent, and my path has led me to digging deep into shamanic studies through a health crisis many years ago. And so I was really called back to myself and my true nature through an ailment, basically, which I feel like is like the typical like dark night of the soul dismemberment way of finding yourself. So that's what brings me here and digging in deeper to just ancient ways.
You know, I didn't know that about you, that it was an ailment that kind of brought you down that
What?
path. I didn't. Um, because I too had, years ago, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which made me go, wait a second, what is this really all about? And that's how like so many things entered my life. So I love that. That's very true.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that another time.
I know, right? Oh my goodness. So, oh, where do we even start? It's such a rich and beautiful topic, and it's ancient. So I guess I want to say up front that there is some sensitivity, right, around some of these topics and maybe even how you and I have experienced them. And I want to share with everyone that's listening that we are on this journey to discover what is true and what is in alignment for our souls. And that can pull you and bring you into all kinds of experiences. And really, if you feel called to something like using a very ancient way of clearing, healing, releasing that is now more safeguarded, which I think is beautiful from, the indigenous people that lived on the planet at a certain time and the cultures and the way that we're honoring those traditions, I think is beautiful. And I also, my belief is that when you're called to something and something speaks to you so strongly, it is part of your unique medicine, the part of your soul that needs that medicine. And I do whatever we talk about today when it comes to, I have lots of props today, very exciting. So if you're not watching the podcast, you may want to sit down and turn on the podcast because I'm going to show you all kinds of fun things. And so anyway, I just wanted to start the podcast with that honest truth of mine and I always share from my heart and what spirit asks me to talk about. So it doesn't always align with some of our societal beliefs and conditionings. And I'm always asking you to question those anyway. Like, do they resonate? Do they work? Is it in alignment for you? And my guidance will always be is to follow your heart. So that's it. Sunnie, do you have anything you want to say about any of that?
I mean, I totally agree with you. I know that, yes, like I want to approach it like in a respectful way because there are certain things that are connected to certain cultures. And but there's also just so much information that, yeah, I mean, I can kind of go deeper on that because the school I originally went to for shamanic studies was guided by an amazing teacher, Jane Ingle Smith, who was adopted into the Lakota tribe. So there was a lot of Native American teachings that she was allowed to teach and things, songs she was allowed to give. But then but that was the only thing that was really like available to me or that was calling to me in person. But as I've kind of gone through my journey, spirit has led me to like my own ancestral thing. So that's kind of some things I'm going to talk about today are
I'm so
just
excited for that.
Northern European traditions. So it's but I also like there's past lives. Like I feel like I've been Native American in a past life, and there's all these things. So open heart, I think, is like the most important thing. And just when you're approaching something with respect, and the medicine, the plant is the authority, they're the teacher, they're the ones, calling the shots here.
Very much. I agree with you 100%. So, wherever you're listening to this, because I know I have listeners all over the world, thank you for that. Um, Go to your local metaphysical store, go to your local herbalist, your local woods, like out in nature, and find what is true for you in your local area. And of course, if you've traveled the world and you've done certain things, gone to certain classes, then if those call to you, woohoo, that's great. So, okay, here we go. I'm gonna start off with sharing something because y'all know I do this research, right? And I find so much good stuff. So I'm gonna read to you what this opening little thing that I found that kind of it really spoke to me, and it focuses on smoke. So, smoke, ever the silent companion to fire. It symbolizes transformation, mystery, and the unseen. An ancient and elusive element, smoke has been an intrinsic component of ritual practice across many cultures for centuries. And I want to start there because, like I said, this isn't necessarily always about smoke, but it is about cleansing and purification. And so some of the herbs and flowers and elements that are used to create smoke have an inherent, Sunny mentioned it, has an inherent energy, uh, purpose, and use over the course of centuries, right? Um, so yeah, and I love that it was, well, because you all know that I love the unseen world, and I never really thought of smoke as that because you see it, it goes up, right? And I was like, whoa, it is part of the unseen world because it's like this partner to fire, which we could have a whole podcast on fire. But anyway, so I'm gonna start sharing my funness with props. Sunny, you just chime in whenever you need to, and I'll of course bring it back to you. But so let's talk about sage because it is the most widely recognized, widely used herb that, like I mentioned, has some controversy or some sensitivity. I don't know really what the right word is there, but this is the sage. This is a sage wand. It has beautiful white sage that has been harvested and that has been. It often comes with string on it, and some people think, oh, that's just to keep it together. There are actually purposes for this string. Prayers have been said. The way that it's tied actually has meaning. And so that's why we really do want to, treat this with respect, with honor, with mystery and magic, because it is transformative. And so when you light it, I mean, when you smell it, it smells awesome. But when you light it, it has a whole nother energy to it. So but I also want to share same bundle, but this sage is locally harvested on Mount Shasta. This is Mount Shasta sage. Um, and so it is not white sage. It is the local sage that grows on the mountain, which, I mean, add Mount Shasta plus sage plus smoke and clearing, cleansing, and woohoo, magic. So it has a very different smell. It's still sage, but it has a very, like, this one has a more sweet smell. And
Yeah, I
so
was gonna say, I remember you gifted me some and it was more sweet and it had like little, does it have like little tiny like ball? Like
yeah, it does. Let's see.
I remember it just being kind of more delicate.
It is. It's very fine. The sage leaves are tiny, right? Really, really tiny compared to the white sage, which the leaves are much bigger. So so if you have to just follow what you're called to. But there are, I guess I want to say that there are many types of sage that can be used. Um, so sage. Oh,
Can I interject?
please. What do we want to say about sage?
Okay, well, so I went on my own white sage adventure and I grew like 30 sage plants in my backyard. I, I invested so much time, energy, and money into white sage. And in the winter, I bought one of those really big domes and put them all in there. And but then got too much moisture, and so they got moldy. But what I noticed was the first harvest that I did get, they were very small. So the bigger the leaves, like like it's hardier, right? It's
Mm,
probably been years of, because I noticed a difference in the smell when they were young versus when it was more mature.
yeah,
Um, Sadly, none of my plants survived. I mean, it's just not the right climate here.
right.
I mixed it in with sand. I did all the things. It's just not really. I know some people have success with it. I don't have a super green thumb, but I tried so hard to, what's so funny though is I had one plant that was successful and it was here at the space. It was a little baby plant, but it was the only one hanging on. And I had it in front of the shop, the spa, right? The camera was right there, right? But it was in kind of a big pot, a bigger pot than the plant, right? Well, someone in the middle of the night sat in the pot and urinated in it. And I have like the back of their head on the camera, but that plant did so good
Wow.
because of like the night, like the probably the night what is it? Nitrous or nitrates, or not nitrates, but
That's in urine?
whatever's it's supposed to be really good for plants.
Yeah.
Because I go pee out, by my redwood tree and as like an offering. But this plant did like was the only one that did good. And I was like, well, maybe that person, it's having a rough night. Maybe they got like some kind of blessing or something from that, plant. But so anyway, that was really funny. And then another thing I want to add, as I was digging deep into Northern European cleansing with plants, is, and I might be saying some of these names, pronouncing some things wrong, but I want to. This is from the Scandinavian School of Shamanism, and the person that wrote the article is Annette Host or Host. And it was really interesting because I never knew this, but Northern Europeans use sage, but it's sagebrush. Sage was short for sagebrush, so it created. She kind of talked about how it created confusion, but it's not a part of the sage family. It is an American Artemisia, Artemisia.
Mm,
So it's like a different family of plant than the actual sage, but it's called sagebrush. And so they would say sage for short. And so I think it like created confusion in that regard. So I thought that was really cool.
it is. It is. All it's funny because um I grew up in Minnesota, so a lot of Scandinavians.
Oh, was just looking at that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so sagebrush is something that I grew up with. We didn't burn it. Um I think my dad's was a farmer, well, a hobbyist, and then, a nurseryman later in life. But um sagebrush is something that you cut down. It was like a weed, and
Okay.
you had to clear it from your gullies and from your fields because it would kind of grow crazy wild. Um,
Okay.
so it makes me just think about um, how one how one culture can view it as something sacred, and a farmer can view it as something like a noxious weed,
Yeah. Well, I
right?
remember my friend Hillary like saying a weed is just like the word weed. It's almost like it's just something that someone doesn't want. And
Exactly.
I was like, oh my gosh, but it's like, it's not bad if you want it, but you know, yeah.
It's all about purpose, perspective, intent. Like, I have, the older I get, the more I recognize that that's true for almost everything. So, um, okay, so you shared about Scandinavia. I'm going to share about Japan then. So, because Japan is home to my soul in so many ways. I've I've had many lives there, and I've remembered several of them. But in this life, I've had the pleasure of living there and studying. I was in university, and I did a year abroad, and I lived with a Japanese family, and they adopted me as their daughter. And so they were my mom and dad, and it was just a sacred, beautiful time. And I spent a lot of time in the temples because it was a place that I could quiet my mind and my fear. It was a place that I could tune into the energies of people that had walked that land before me. And I was pretty young. I was 20, 21 years old. And, it just felt necessary. And I remember that in the temples, they burned woods and they often had little fires going, and the smoke, it was part of the daily practice of the temples. Different temples used different smells. I could sense the difference. I never learned what they were, but then I did some research, and so in Japan they use agar wood, agar wood, and I still don't know what that is, but I get the sense that it's this beautiful fragrant wood that I kept smelling in the smoke in the temples. Um, and it is something that if I smelled it again today, I'd be instantly reminded and transported back to those moments. And I remember I was I was having a homesickness moment. And I was in Kyoto, and I was at a temple, and they were doing their morning, I don't know what to call it, prayers, routine, I don't know, cleansing, honestly, because that day, hundreds of people were going to come through the temple. And I just got there very early. I always try to get there when the temple first opened to the public. And so I was blessed to sit and watch these. I don't know if they're monks. I mean, this is how clueless I was back then. I still am about this kind of stuff. But I watched these people intently walk the perimeter of the land, and then walk the perimeter of the outside of the temple, and then walk the inside of the temple. And I was like, wow. And they were so reverent, and so it was inspiring. And it brought a lot of sacredness to my experience of sitting in this temple. And now, all these years later, I recognize, well, they were purifying. They were asking that the energies come, the nature energies, the spirit energies, to come and be in and around the temple as protection, as cleansing, as healing for all those that visited. Because honestly, there wasn't a temple, tiny or large, that I visited that I didn't walk away feeling more tranquil, more aware of myself, and excited. Yeah, mostly excited to be where I was, even though I missed home, right? So it was fun to find out that they use this kind of particular wood in Japan. And it's one of the woods that I was actually grown, in Japan. So I think, I think it's interesting to just any culture, pick one and Google it and see if they use some form of incense or smoke or burning or fire ritual to bring in clarity. So,
Absolutely. And I love that you have that experience with the Japanese culture. And I actually did a whole year. I had a spirit part of one of my courses that I took. You have to do 2 years of level 3 with
mhm.
this school. I mean, the school's no longer active. The founder has retired, but you have to do level 3 twice. And it's allowing a ascended spirit to come to you. You work with them for a year and you practice merging with them and allowing their message to come through you. Well, the first year was a Japanese ascended master named Kamaran, and he wore like 1,000 layers of these robes, and I ended up having this. I have this Japanese. I have to send you pictures because I dressed up as him for the regalia, and so I'll send you a picture because he likes to smoke tobacco out of the pipe, and so I would do that, and there was so many amazing teachings from him. So we'll have to talk about that
We
more. I'm so
will. Oh my
excited.
God. I love it. That's so fun. We're finding out so much more about each other. So tobacco, that I think that's a great next one. I didn't have it on my list to talk about today. Um, but I love that in Japan and this particular ascended master that you were with and learning from really used tobacco from a pipe, because I think of that as like a Native American indigenous people's kind of, the pipe, right?
Right?
Like the
Yeah,
sacred
it's this
smoke pipe.
very long pipe with a little, bowl at the end. And I would get like pure tobacco and smoke it because it was, because he was utilizing my vessel, and he was a Reiki, ascended Reiki man. I mean, all of these things. He was like all of these things, but it was really cool to learn about that. But there was also like geisha in there, or
Mm-hmm.
geisha energy, but it was predominantly male. So anyway, that's a whole
Mm,
other thing we have to talk about later.
totally. I mean, I still incorporate from my traditions and teachings, and a lot of it was Lakota based. So, and incorporating tobacco in my offerings to the land,
Yeah,
and so I will share
like
a
prayer
short.
ties.
Yeah, yeah, the prayer
Like
ties. Yeah.
they taught us how to make prayer ties at school for like the fire walk, and you put it in the bundle, and then you clear it and you put your prayers into it, and then there's a certain way that you knot it,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think tradition, it's funny how this podcast, we're talking a lot about cultural traditions. And I think part of the medicine, if you're listening, is to tune into that, because in our Western American culture, we are almost encouraged not to own our cultural history, our cultural lineage. Um, because it's so mixed, right? It's, you can be from, a mom and a dad that have like 5 or 6 cultures, and then you're born and now you have mixes of like 10 cultures in you, but there's maybe one that you're drawn to. And so I encourage everyone to just honor that, like it's easy for me because I'm half and half. My parents kept it simple, but my friends, when I grew up in Minnesota, they were all kinds of Scandinavian, and so it would be German mixed with Norwegian and Swedish mixed with Norwegian, and it was all very interesting. Oh, and then Irish and Italian mixed with German. I mean, so it was I didn't realize, I mean, I have realized it before, but there's a rich history there. These cultures and countries have existed way longer than what we give credit to in the United States, even though the indigenous people of the United States, of this land, have existed for just as long, but it's not something that is cultivated here in the United States, because this is supposed to be the land of the melting pot. You're supposed to come and like wash yourself clean and be American. And so these are my beliefs and perspectives, just owning that. But you know, I like to think of us more like a salad bowl. We make a delicious salad and everybody gets to be their part. And so, so own your part, whatever you're called to, because you're going to find some of these beautiful ways of honoring, clearing, cleansing, healing. Um, I wanted to bring in, because again, every culture has it. So this is it's a little tiny, very thin, easily burnable piece of paper that has um, incense in it, and they're highly used in India, and they smell amazing. And so you can buy these, and this is just another way to bring in smoke, bring in intention of burning off the things that are heavy in our awareness, the things that are heavy in our heart, the environment that is around us. We are in a very chaotic, turbulent uh, world environment right now. We as a collective human body are going through processes of awareness, shift, change, which can cause a lot of chaos. And so, one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast today was to give you some tools to help release and bring higher frequency, higher vibration into your awareness. And smoke is a great way to do that because it lifts and pulls and releases from you if it with intention, right? So um, you can burn anything. I mean, I have a candle going right now. It doesn't have smoke, but it has fire. And
Got one.
see,
I have a candle lit all day when I see clients because we're always transmuting something or should be encouraged to transmute, and the smoke is carrying our prayers further, out into the universe, which is beautiful. And the Danish would smoke out their whole house, every corner, every aspect after winter because they were inside,
mm.
all winter. So when winter was over, they would just smoke that shit out the
you know,
whole house before going into the next season. I don't know exactly what they used. It was probably a combination, but I do have like a list of some things I wrote down that the Northern Europeans used frequently. And one of them was sweetgrass, actually. I didn't realize that sweetgrass is also grown in certain parts of Scandinavia. And let's see here. So cedar, juniper, um, wormwood,
mm-hmm.
mugwort, and then the sagebrush. But they also, and it depended on the season, right? So if it wasn't flourishing in the spring, then whatever was growing in the winter, which was usually like wood, like they would get wood in the winter, and then whatever was blooming. And then they also use a lot of lavender,
Mm-hmm.
wild rose, bed straw, black currant leaves, birch bark,
Those,
thyme,
yeah.
mint, rosemary, and pine sap. I want to do more research on all of those, but yeah, it was really fun to dig in and be like, oh, I didn't know sweetgrass was used in Scandinavia. Um,
Yeah, that
yeah,
is really cool. Well, sweetgrass is just a grass, right?
yeah,
And then whatever culture, if it grew abundantly, they would often use, like I said, they would use what they had because it was there. But you mentioned rosemary. Uh, and I was looking up stuff because I wanted to give some information, and all of this will be in the summary notes from the podcast. But like rosemary is essential for balancing energy, it encourages good communication and clarifying your space. And so I'm going to bring up my witchy self because oftentimes rosemary would be braided into a wreath and hung on your front door because it was a protector. It allowed, it protected the house and it cleansed and cleared people that came through your home. So if they had ill intent or they had heavy, dark energies that were not conducive to your home, the rosemary wreath would cleanse and purify them as they walked through your home, right? So rosemary is one of I think it's one of the oldest because it's biblical as well. So it's wonderful to eat. And in all the Mediterranean countries around the Mediterranean Sea, they all use rosemary as in their foods. And so imagine the medicine as a protectant, imagine the medicine as smoke, and then imagine eating the medicine. It cleanses and clears the cells. So a lot of time, and then I mean, it can be transported into all kinds of different, rosemary oil, rosemary spray, like all the various ways of using it. But that's just one simple example. And you mentioned resin. so many of the that I found when I was reading through this and my own personal use is resin oriented things. So trees produce a resin, and then that resin is often used in creating smoke, in um, creating essential oil. And myrrh has profoundly moved into my life in a way that it hasn't before. But
I love that.
go ahead.
Oh
I
no,
was
I was
gonna,
gonna say I love that.
oh, so there are these lovely little sticks. They're just like bark dust almost, but it's brought together very innocently with some wax and stuff. So there's no toxic stuff in it. But in this little blend, this particular one, it has Palo Santo um, and myrrh. And so it's really like I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I've had this kind of incense in my life since 2011, so 13 years. And for some reason, I never put together there was myrrh in this one. And like I said, myrrh came crashing in to my life in a way that I cannot mistake it. So here's a myrrh. Myrrh has been used around the world for thousands of years to bring focus, lightness, and to help open the heart. I don't know anyone that doesn't need that.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, so
and
pine.
so I'm trying to remember. So myrrh's was it like the more muskier scent, the
It
myrrh?
is.
Okay.
It is. It's also one of the oils in the Bible that was brought by the wise men to gift Jesus on, when he was recently born, as a welcoming and an honoring of knowing who he was. And so it's that old. Like it's even older than that, because in ancient
Yeah.
Egypt they used it as well. They used it for embalming and for blessing, the, well, what are they called in Egypt? They're not kings and queens. The pharaoh. And I keep thinking about Isis because she was one of the beings and deities in Egypt. And so anyway, it's super old, like beginning of time old. um and so I love bringing that in too, like, um I started with sage in the early part of this podcast, but there are just so many available. And that's why go with what you know, go with what you're called to, because it is your unique medicine. And so, like I said, myrrh came screaming into my life recently. And so I use it as essential oil. I now am burning it. And resin is an interesting thing because it's not something you can light on fire. So you often have to get charcoal tablets. They're little black charcoal discs. And you actually put the resin, the little beads of resin. Let's see. Yeah. Um, the little beads of resin. They look like little, like, I don't even know, they're just little beads, but they're resin from the tree and they're dried. So you sprinkle the little resin on the charcoal disc and smoke, and it smells like resin when you get it like in this um option is so pure. Like, it's no mistaking the pureness and the energy and um the transmutative power that it has, because it overtakes you in a way that it's really hard to describe, actually. But you can get resin, probably online for sure, but at your local stores that might sell incense or herbs or crystals, or metaphysical stores. And so you can do myrrh resin, frankincense, a lot of the older scents of the world, trees of the world, have resin. Copal is another one that came into my life when I lived in New Mexico. And copal, I wrote something about copal. Okay, so it has many incredible healing properties, which I agree with. I've experienced that, but it's also cleansing, purification, and protection. And I have heard a story. I was told a story. I have not checked if this is true, but the way that the copal resin leaves the tree, looks like little tears, little teardrops. And so when you have grief and sadness and you're struggling and you can't cry your own tears because for some reason you won't allow yourself, copal is a beautiful thing to burn, because it cries the tears you can't cry. And so, and it also evokes tears, because I'm getting all teary eyed right now when I talk about it, because we all have tears we haven't cried. We're all holding sadness and grief inside of ourselves for whatever has happened in our lives. That is not something that I can even start to list of why. We all have it for our own selves. And so to release it allows for more space to hold higher frequency, to hold love, to hold gratitude. Um, and when you transmute grief into love or grace or joy, there's just a resonance in you that is emanated out into the world that literally shifts your home, your workplace, your walking through the neighborhood. Like it's one of those things. So copal is powerful. Highly recommend trying it out. I also will give a little caution about overusing it because um, because it is so intense and it is becoming less and less available. So it is one of those sacred resources that we really want to hold and use, um, for all the right reasons. So I'll get off my soapbox on copal.
I have a couple beautiful experiences with copal. I never heard of it before, but I had a couple of clients that are Hispanic, and we were doing energy work, and their ancestor showed up and was kind of like, "We're doing, like we're doing this session." Like as far like usually like my allies would come in and perform the work, and they're like, no, like I want to show the client their descendant how we did it. And copal came up a couple of times, and just tons of smoke, just really like heavily saturated. And it was really beautiful to witness that, and
Mm.
very humbling to get to be the person to relay that message to them is super sacred. So really honored for that. And I just want to go back before we go too far to rosemary.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm like kind of obsessed with rosemary. So I want to I have like rosemary body wash. I have rosemary um, lotion, and it's all natural, derived, but it's very close to my heart. I mean, I purify my body with it daily, but I also have a place out in front of my house that we get the evening sunsets on
Mm.
this spot. And so nothing does good there. Everything's always just shriveled up and died. And it wasn't until I planted rosemary out there that it is just thriving. But it's also, as you're walking up to my doorway, it is lined with rosemary. So for me, it feels protective, but it's also a place where I'll take the plant and just rub and get some of the resin of the plant on my hands to purify like my hands before I go in the house. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so I love burning rosemary. So rosemary is definitely close to my heart. And then I have a Northern California redwood tree in my backyard,
Yeah.
and from that area, and so it kind of brings me back to like where I was born. But it's this weekend before this podcast, it was wanting me to gather from it
Mm.
and kind of make some bundles, but then also just take off the little needles
Hmm.
and then get the resin in my hands and smell it and then dry it. And so anyway, there's all this stuff
Mm.
coming up from that, which is really, so it's sometimes the plant is like calling to you.
Yes.
Sometimes you're coming to the plant and singing to it, speaking to it, asking it. And you want to wait for that answer, and you want to connect in with your higher self and the higher, like the higher vibration of the plant, and not just be like, well, this is just what I want. So it's a yes. Like you want to really listen to the plant and not just your ego of like, oh, I love this plant, so I'm going to take it. Like if you're getting a no, move on to another plant, like really honor that answer. So
100%. I'm so glad you brought it up, because just because it's growing in a convenient place for you doesn't mean that it's your sacred medicine. So, like Sunny said, follow your heart. Like if you're drawn to it, ask its permission. It will let you know if it's a yes or no. When you go to touch it, I've encountered lavender, rosemary, things that, grow. And I think, oh, they're so abundant. Yeah, I could take a little. But as I touched it, it was so vibrant and so alive that my blessing from it came from simply seeing it and then touching it, right? It didn't need, I didn't need to cut it and take it with me. So whatever it is that you're encountering, if it's alive and a plant, a tree, a shrub, an herb, ask ask for how you best can partner with that, because it really is that partnership. Like I have all these different ways of cleansing, purifying, saging, all of that, right? But I don't use all of them every day. It's more nuancy than that. It's listening, asking for permission, honoring. I was always taught from a little girl, I was always taught that you give an offering before you take, because it's respectful to the land, to the plant, to the ancestors, to the beings that used to live here, to the spirits that hold that space now. Is you give an offering of gratitude and thanks, and then you wait and you ask, can I take, can I cut, can I touch, can I? And it's become so normal to me that I don't actually have to pause and wait. Like the answer is present for me because it's been years of practice around that. So for people that are just starting out, please don't be afraid of it, but just take a deep breath and just tune in. The plant will tell you what it can and be for you, right? So thanks for bringing that up, Sunny, because it's
I want one more thing I wanted to quote from Annette Host. I'll have to look up how to say her last name. She's in Sweden, and plants are old and strong, and we are their apprentice. And I just love
oh,
that.
that's perfect. Yeah, we truly are. We truly are. It's so true. Something that you mentioned earlier about they would clean and clear their house with smoke. Um, I've done a lot of house clearings, and I've moved quite a bit in my life, so I'm always in a different space often. And like even this new, I have a new house. It's 3.5 years old now, but when it was first constructed, I came to the land and I gave an offering so that the house would be built with the highest potential possibility. And I put things in the dirt. And then I came back when the house was done and I was about to move in, and it was like, I don't know, I got a very strong don't go in there. And I was like, but this is my house. I got to go in there. And it had so many energies of all the people that were very skilled to build the walls and paint the walls and put the floors in and bring in the toilets and like hook up all the plumbing and hook up all the electricity. And there was just so much energy chaos that was residual in the home. So even though it was new, it wasn't. It was full of energies. And so smoking out a house is a real thing, not just in what Sunny shared, but like in so many cultures too, because when you open up all the windows and then you go intentionally room to room, and you're just speaking what comes to you really, but it can be as simple as any energies that are not in alignment with my energy, I command you to leave. And that kind of languaging is important. I suppose you could do. It's not my style. But I suppose you could do, could you please leave, like inviting them to leave. But I'm a much more like, get out and get out now.
I when I first kind of like I used to be very like, well, if you want, kind of, and now it's sometimes like, get the F out of here.
Yeah, completely. Particularly when there are stuck energies, right? In an older home, so many people have lived there, so many emotions have been shared in that house or space. And every time I've ever cleared a house, it's thanked me. The house itself has been like, oh, thank you. Like it's more at rest. And I'm like, yeah, that's it, right? I learned from I don't even know what to call him. I'll just call him a friend at this point. Um, but he's a very high vibrational cosmic being, in human form in this incarnation, and he taught me that you, like if you have a sage wand or an incense stick, even that you go, if you're pulling something out, it's counterclockwise, and you go along all the walls of it. And so not only is the smoke clearing and transmuting energies, but your counterclockwise rotation is pulling out the things that no longer need to be there, that energies no longer need to be. And so, and you can do it with anything, a piece of wood, an incense stick, uh, any of the various things we've already talked about. And that was a really good one because sometimes we do the center of the room and we don't think about the walls and the corners. Oh, the corners. You gotta pull that corner energy out. I don't even know how to describe it other than when I haven't, my house hasn't felt as nice or the space hasn't felt as nice, pleasant, peaceful, open. Um, and energies I have found can be fairly sneaky. And so make sure you intend that smoke to go into the corners of your room, to really get the whole space. And you can also hold it in your mind because there is a magic, a wizardry around it where what you see is. And so when you're doing cleansing for yourself or your family or your house or your car or your land, if you can see it in your mind, in that third eye, beautiful, imaginative mind, beautiful that we have, it's so powerful. If you see it leave, it has happened, right? If you intend and then see it, it is so. Like there's something, it's a special little formula. But it has always worked. Um, and so, and okay, so
Yeah, you
one,
have to believe it for sure. I
yes,
totally agree with you. It's yes, because you can, and that's like that was taught in like curse unraveling too. Like if you keep going back and re-talking about it as if it still is, then it still is,
yeah,
which can be
absolutely.
hard. It just takes practice.
Mhm. It does. It does.
One of the things Spirit showed me when I was doing some house clearings too, like some of the sequences that had showed up for certain houses was smoking it first and then drumming to like break up and like push the energy like out and
Hmm.
like raise the vibration. And then I have like this Tibetan bell, and that was like bringing in the divine. And it was, a lot of work, right? But but it felt like very like thorough, right? Because you're like kind of hitting it like from all angles.
Yeah. Yes. I concur. That has been my experience too. And when it's
And
solo,
sometimes some holy water.
oh yeah, holy water is great. Um, yeah. What else have I used? Sprays, with essential oils in them. But if when you're solo and you're doing it, then you do have to do it in steps. But what I invite in 4 or 5 friends to do it with you. It's so fun and everybody gets to have their experience. But as I'm using smoke or whatever, they're drumming or rattling or they're ringing bells to to break up the stagnant energy so that when the smoke comes, it can lift it easier. Um, and so highly do it, keep doing it until it's done. And sometimes it is a ceremony where it
Yeah.
can take a while and you just have to be patient. As the person that is
Some,
holding that space, it takes as long as it takes.
yeah. Because sometimes it's like I've found from personal experiences that there's a teaching in there. And if you try to rush it along too fast and you're not gathering the teaching, and then it's like, well, what was even the point? It's like, oh, I gotta, I'm like, I just want to move it. And it's like, no, you gotta learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. So I want to come back to all the people that are listening and give some simplicity to all of this because we've shared some stories. Hopefully, it's inspired you. Hopefully, the information that we've gathered will be helpful to you. But there is a way to do it that is sacred and that is honoring all that is, like we've talked about. But when you are in a state of needing to be cleared, to have additional protection when you wake up or when you walk in or when you discover that there is an energy that is not in alignment with you and you don't know how to get rid of it. I want to give some simple, easy ways that I know your soul will connect with the perfect right medicine for you that is in alignment with your soul. So Sunny and I both mentioned we have a candle lit the whole all day when when we're in session. I pretty much have a candle lit all day in my house. So lighting a candle is wonderful. It dispels negative energy and it burns and transmutes energy. So that can just be a very simple thing with intention, right? So simple act with added intention can do a lot. Um, we've talked about using certain grasses, sage, herbs, flowers, plants, trees to bring in their medicine. So you may or may not have access to that. And if you don't have access to it, smoke is smoke. So burn something that smokes. I mean, I, in a pinch, have used newspaper because I just needed the smoke. Like I needed it to rise up and out, right? So if you have access to this stuff, to all the things we've shared, I'm going to give some links. I'm grateful because Sunny has, sage grass, cedar, rosemary, wands, and bundles at the spa that you can purchase online. And if you live locally, you can come pick up. And so you can get access to it. But if you don't, and it's something that you need, um, use what you've got. Again, intention is one of the most critical things with this. If you are feeling, sometimes you get those weird feelings like someone's watching you or something feels really heavy, or you walk into a space and all of a sudden you feel angry or you feel depressed or you feel sad and you haven't been feeling that way. You've actually been in quite a good mood and all of a sudden you walk into a space. I mean, I've walked into stores and left with all kinds of crap on me. So that's for real. And so you can shift that. You can um, like I said, light a candle, burn something. Um, and last but not least, which we haven't talked a lot about, but I'm a firm believer in prayer, not from a religious perspective, but from a connection perspective. So your words and your intent become prayer when spoken and felt. And that can change, heal, and shift in a way that is so beyond our human mind understanding. It is deeply powerful. Um, and so, whether you pray from a religious perspective or you pray because it's just you talking, because a lot of times people don't like to use the word prayer, and it's your voice. It it is prayer. When it is intended to do something, it becomes prayer. It becomes your words, and your vibration are alchemical. They shift and grow and change all that is, right? All that is. And so say it with heart. And like Sunny mentioned before, if you believe it, it is so. And so whatever you're saying, you're believing it because it's coming out of you. It is your last ditch effort, maybe, of like, oh, save me from this. I've got to get out of this. Like whatever that is, it can be like that. Or it can be very quiet and still. All experiences are welcomed and necessary, and follow your heart, follow your intuitive knowingness, but you can keep it very simple. um, and I just wanted to remind you of that, because sometimes some of these lovely stories that Sunny and I share, or that I share all the time, and I'm sure Sunny does too, can feel really grandiose, like, oh my God, well, but she's studied for years, she's been doing this forever. That may all be true. Yay for us, and yay for you if you come and have a session with us. But
Right. And like, I'm having new experiences all the time, like I always joke, it's like doing laundry. You always have another load of laundry that you need to do. And we're never not learning. And we're always growing and learning something new. And it just happens to be like our skill set that we're focusing on, right?
Mhm.
Everybody has a different calling and skill set that they're focusing on. So this could just be like a little addition to what their life is. But for us, it's like, you know, kind of like our job. Like spirit is like, you are supposed to be doing this.
Yes.
Um, I want to quote Annette again from the Scandinavian School of Shamanism. And she says, smoke is used to invoke and call desired spirits and powers to attract harmony, create beauty and sweetness, used to give thanks and send prayers. I just
Mm,
thought that was really sweet.
it is. It is. And so we've talked a lot about clearing, cleansing, purifying. And that quote totally reminds me of the equal and opposite, right? Where you can call it in, and you can send your smoke signal up and say, I need, and then it comes, right? So I love that
Because you
reminder.
want to bring in the power to, like to clear.
Yeah.
Like it's like bringing it, being in your full power, believing it, standing your ground. And a recent session I had with Danny was I had a little rat's nest of fear from past lives, and I could feel it. And I was like, I don't know what this is coming from. And so, we all have our old ancient things that we're working on, and we're imperfect. We're perfectly imperfect and always working on something. And so really, moving out of that, not doing it like, in a scared way, really knowing like you have that seat, you have that high seat, you are God's child, and you have the power and the strength, and knowing that it is, and really, putting your foot down
Yes. Yes to that. So um let's see. Was there
and
anything?
trusting in your allies,
Uh,
like your team,
yeah, so Sunny
your
and I talked about animals in our last get together, and so I'm gonna link that one, because you brought up allies, and so check it out. It can be part two, which I think it
because it
was
is
part two.
sometimes, and even still it's like, what, you really? And then like something will happen and you're like, oh yeah, oh yeah. But I think it's just the humanness of it. We're like always looking for like validation and confirmation.
Yeah,
But
we
it's
are,
like,
because we need it.
I'm never disappointed.
No, you kind of can't be. Um, so I'm going to share a quote as well, because I found it. At first, it didn't make much sense to me, so I might read it a couple times. It's by this guy, Ben. I think it's pronounced Ewing. That's what it looks like, Ewing. Um, But he writes a blog, and I liked it because it was from a masculine perspective, as well as I believe he's Catholic, so a Roman Catholic perspective. But the quote is, "For if the light in our soul goes out, so does the sweet smoke of sacrifice in our hearts." And it took me a while to really sit with that one, because I'm like, well, one, does the light of our soul go out? I don't know that I believe that, but
Can you read it? Can you read it again?
yeah. For if the light in our soul goes out, so does the sweet smoke of sacrifice in our hearts.
Okay, I wonder if it's like metaphoric for like if you kind of lose your spark,
Yeah.
or you're just like, oh, I feel so soulless or something, you're like in despair.
Yes, I think it is that. The more I sat with it, I was like, oh, so smoke, the light. So we talk about the fire and the light, and we talk about our souls enlightening. And when we lose hope, or we get to that despair space, we no longer have the ability to access that part of our heart that has the eternal hope, that has the eternal flame. And so the part of the quote that I got really sticky with was sacrifice. But then I recognized it as an offering. So our hearts hold everything emotionally, right? It has the anger, it has the sadness, it has the grief, and it also has all the joy and the hope and the love and all of that. It holds the duality of light and dark in an emotional way, in an energetic way. And so we have to surrender. I use the word surrender. He uses the word sacrifice, those heavy emotions from our heart, because it's where it's really held. Our bodies, our energy, I mean, it can be held everywhere, but the heart has a energy. It has a light. A lot of times, because I was raised Catholic, I can give a little insight. A lot of times you'll see pictures of Jesus with the eternal flame heart, and Mother Mary also has the eternal flamed heart. And it's the heart on fire, because it is the furnace of, I mean, they don't actually say this, but again, I grew up Catholic. They just believe that if you enlighten the heart with fire, it is an eternal flame that is from God that brings lightness to your life, right? And so from him, for if the light in our souls go out, our heart, right? So does the sweet smoke of sacrifice, because when we offer it to the flame, what is the first quote, the first thing I read? It is the unseen. It is the thing that is leaving. It is in the smoke that it transmutes and
I got
transforms.
chills. Woo!
It took
So
me
good.
it took me like 3 weeks to sit with that quote,
I
because
love that you deciphered it though, and just like,
it was driving me crazy. It was like, I swear, I kept thinking about it, and I'm like, and then I thought, maybe I'm not going to share it because I made him wrong. I did the whole thing. I judged him. I made him wrong. He's a man. He's Catholic. Nah, nah, nah. I did it all.
oh.
And I share that with
But
everyone
he
because I'm human.
he showed you.
He did. It was a hard teaching.
I like to think of that flame that's come up like in sessions in the past where it's like we all have this flame. And I've been shown that it's like it's like that personal power flame, and you can imagine like you have control over it, right? Like you can ignite it, you can put it out, but you can like also protect it from other people, burning out your flame, or like, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And I'll add that even if you feel like your flame has been shit on, has been rained on, and is completely gone, it is not. Because your soul, your energy body, holds the eternal flame for you. And so it can never go out. It can dim and get really, really small, but it's not out. And when you bring awareness and intention to it, guess what happens? It gets bigger. And you can grow that flame into a roaring fire, because that's the fun and the uniqueness of being a soul in human form. So, um, and I want to remind people of that, because we're moving into the darkest part of the year. You know, we are going to get darker and darker and darker if you live on the northern hemisphere. And not until December 21st this year, which is solstice, is the return of the light. And from that point forward, we're going to get lighter and lighter and lighter. But we are going into the deep, dark places in our world. Yeah, sunny sweater. Exactly.
You know what's funny? The sign out front for the spa is only it's half lit vertically.
Well, there we go. It's that equal light dark thing. And so when we are in that darkness naturally, the sun sets earlier and it's darker for a longer period of our day, it can get emotionally, mentally, energetically darker. And so light your house, you know, add candles. I would encourage candles over everything else, because the rest are electric, which, you know, if that's all you got, that's what you got. But candles are warming and they're light. And so they can help with that, increasing your frequency. And and now you have all kinds of other fun tools to play with during this dark season. The smoke and all the various ways you can create it. And I really do hope it lifts your heart, it lifts your soul, it increases your vibration. Um, and I guess I also just want to say is that if for some reason the darkness has gotten you and it's heavy and you don't have the hope, then reach out. I tell you in every podcast that I am here for you. And I literally mean that. Like, you can get a hold of me. And if I'm available, like if I'm not with my dad or with my sister or something, I will be there. And if it takes me an hour or so to return your text or your call or your email, you know, I will respond, because I know what it feels like to get so overwhelmed with the heaviness that you feel like it just will never leave. It will never shift. And I never want anyone to feel that way. So call me.
Thank you, Danny. You're amazing and beautiful, and I'm so grateful to have you come into my life in so many ways. You're a huge mentor, and I did want to add, like, if you're looking, if you're not sure and you want to be respectful and you don't have access to nature very easily, or you're just not sure what you're doing, um, I mean, this flew off the wall today.
That's right.
And it's a harvesting wild crafting calendar, which, like, I'm like, oh, I need to go home and study this. And it talks about what is available, like what is respectful harvesting for the season. But also, like, reach out to your local herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here in town, we have Chelsea at Herbs and Jars. We have Michaela with Medicine Gypsy, to name, just a couple. But, if you're like kind of wanting to make sure you do it right or something, reach out to an herbalist, because that is they're trained in
Yes.
all those things. So I am always like bowing down to the herbalist because we all have our different crafts and specialties.
So much so. And so we'll include those links in the summary so that it's easy for you to find them. Um, because resources are priceless and they are there, and you're not alone in your journey, and you can ask questions. And I mean, Sunny and I know a lot. Just saying. But we also know more people, right? Like our
Yes.
circle and web of all the, which I will call magical beings that live in human form, we have a lot of names, connections, We'll share again them as many as we can in the summary notes, but we may not have thought of someone while we're talking right now. And so I'm happy to give references, resources, be that connector. And I'm pretty sure Sunny feels the same way.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm always like a bridge for, just getting people together and getting to the right resource. And yeah, we have so many amazing people just in our local area that are doing beautiful work. And it's such an honor to be surrounded by all of these amazing people.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank Sunny for sharing all of her wisdom, insights, examples, and stories. Um, I hope that you all have enjoyed our conversation, and I don't know what else to say. It was a big episode. I'm grateful that I didn't have to do it alone, and that um, I love how complementary we are with each other. Like you said before, our allies work really well together, and
Yeah.
it's even more so apparent. Um, yeah, every day.
And I'm looking over my notes. I'm like, is there anything else that like I wanted to bring up about um smoke cleansing? And I feel like we covered it. Yeah. Oh, like, and then also another thing too is like the smoke can it like you talked about already, defining a ritual space,
Mhm.
right? Like having it be like, this is, the perimeter. And also to cleanse as like practitioners, to cleanse your tools.
Yeah,
So like after a session's done, sometimes I'll be like in a rush and like my tools are literally like, hello. um, you need to, and it doesn't have to be with smoke. It could be with water or, different ways. And then also like your body, cleansing your body as well. And so
that's a
I
good
think that
reminder.
was everything.
That's a really good reminder because we talked about homes, but it is true for everything. Like your jewelry, your clothes, your, uh, I mean,
Like
anything
thrifted
in your home,
items.
right? Items, everyday items. So you can cleanse all of those. And it's true. Like I use a lot of crystals and tuning forks and things in my sessions, and I place them on people, right? So it's literally on someone else. Um and sometimes I like crystals I wash and I rinse, but a lot of times I'll just burn. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about Palo Santo. So this is a wood. It's holy wood. Palo Santo. It means holy wood, and it's often from South America. It does happen in the United States too, but I learned about it while I lived in Peru, and it's very popular now. You can get it pretty much anywhere that sells these kinds of things. But it's a smoke too, and it smells divinely delicious. Like I love the smell of it. Anyway, all of that can cleanse and clear, transmute. I do a lot of energy work, so I do the energy blowout of of the space and tools. But you too can do that. I guess is why we're sharing this. Is um, sometimes I have to clear and cleanse beds and pillows. Like that's another thing. So it's endless. You can do.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you're feeling. Like if I go to the thrift store, and like you're bringing something home that like belonged to another person, or yeah.
Yeah, agree 100%. So have fun with this, people. Enjoy, explore, try it out. I'm always looking for feedback. So share your stories with me. Write a comment, send me an email. I would love to hear how it went for you. Like, oh, I tried it and whoa. It's all acceptable. I'd love to hear. So, well, thank you very much, Sunny. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Danny. That was so fun. I love chatting with you.
Ah, me too.